Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 155, recording on Tuesday afternoon, April 7th. We're like 2 weeks away from the draft. I can't wait. I've watched like 100 of these guys on tape, the all 22. I mean, you can see that if you're watching on YouTube, you see the bags beneath my eyes. I mean, I've just been grinding tape, and I've loved every part of it. As we usually do early in the week, gonna have a little bit of a Q&A episode for you guys. Ask for questions on social media, and I got like 35 plus. Not sure if we're gonna be able to rip through 35, but we'll do my best to get to as many as possible. If you're new here and watching on YouTube, thank you, first of all. Please hit that subscribe button right below. It helps us out. It's helped building the channel. We continue to do it over the course of these weeks, and should be a fun month to come with the draft. But if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, you can rate and review and follow us on those platforms, which helps us out. This show, which we do 2 times a week, is presented by First Resource Bank. You're watching, you're new, you're like, what the heck is First Resource Bank? Well, I'm going to tell you about it. They are a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by really good people. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. These guys are from the Midwest. They're big Vikings fans. They care about this community, and they have an online banking platform that is, it's been my favorite since I moved up here and started living up in Minnesota, where hopefully it gets warm at some point. But yeah, those guys are awesome. The banking platform is phenomenal. Their information is below. I will also say, want to give a shout out and support a company that is, it's as much a company as it is an investment in Minnesota football and the development of Minnesota football. It's called ProMN. We'll link them in the description as well. But Tanner Morgan, former Gophers quarterback, is a part of it. So are 2 guys, Graham and Kurt. These guys, they really looked at the Minnesota football industry, and they're like, if kids want to play and they're sixth grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, what kind of opportunities exist? Well, they have what is called a spring academy. So let's say your son loves football, plays quarterback, plays O-line, plays receiver, wants to learn from college athletes and work out, improve their speed and conditioning, get ready for some of the youth leagues in 9th grade or high school. These guys also know a lot about the recruiting process. ProMN, again, link is going to be in the description, but these guys are awesome, and they really just want to lift the level of football here in the state of Minnesota. So pretty cool to get to shout those guys out. All right, let's hop right into questions. I know somebody's going to scream at me. Alec, we're 3 minutes in. We haven't even started. But, I mean, you're settling in here. You're working out. You're getting ready. You're in the car. So, all right, here we go. Nick Miller, who listens way too much probably to the Alec Lewis Show, so you really worry about his health, but you hope he's okay, asks, Alec, how will the Vikings navigate the running back position leading up to the draft? This is his opinion. He says, doesn't seem like there are a ton of options that make sense, who are a fit for a zone scheme, have breakaway speed, and can pass protect. So we'll just start with the basics. The Vikings currently have 3 backs on the roster who are trustworthy. Aaron Jones, everyone listening, you guys listening, you watching, you know what he is. Probably not going to take it the distance, but he can be dynamic in spurts, especially when he is healthy. He is also a reliable pass catcher and pass protector out of the backfield. Jordan Mason, I'm still of the belief that there's more upside with him as a runner, similar to Aaron Jones. Is he going to be the guy to take the top off the defense and rip one for, I keep saying rip, don't know why, but hit it for 60 yards? I don't know if he is that guy, but he is an efficient runner where every time you hand him the ball, he's got the vision and the acceleration to make something happen. So it's a solid place to start, I would say. And then Xavier Scott is a depth option. Definitely know that the running backs in this draft are intriguing to the Vikings. That's something I know, having conversations with people inside the building. But to Nick's point, it's a good one. There's really like tiers of separation. So at the top, you obviously have Jeremiah Love, and he's in a tier of his own, and historically in a pretty special tier of running backs where he can, be the explosive guy. He can catch out of the backfield. I was watching some USC tape some USC defenders last night, which again is a reflection of where I am in my life at the moment. But they were playing against Notre Dame, and I mean, Jeremiah Love is just galloping 50 yards. I mean, this guy's a special player. Do I expect him to get out of the top five? It maybe. Do I expect him to get out of the top 10? No. Do I expect the Vikings to trade a future premium pick to move up that far? I'd be pretty surprised if that happens. And so after that, after him at running back, Jeremiah Love, you've probably got another guy in a tier of his own in Jadarian Price. Now, is he the most, does he have the most burst? No, but I would think of him kind of in the Kyron Williams vein of, obviously Kyron is the running back in Los Angeles, really efficient, versatile, multiple. Where is he going to go? Like, he might be in play in that 49 range if the Vikings look for a running back at that spot. I'm not sure if they will. It's probably also a little bit dependent on what do they do in the first round at 18? Who else is available at that spot at 49? But I'd say Jadarian Price, and this is my own evaluation, but also talking to people in the industry, kind of like these, he's kind of in a second tier. And then after that, I mean, this is where you get to Nick's question, the interesting tier. You've got like Jonah Coleman from Washington, kind of like a 5'8", 220, not probably the best burst, but can be a pretty all-around back. Mike Washington from Arkansas is more of the, big body, but also really big burst. But does he have the vision and the all-around ability to be a full-time running back? I think there's questions there. And then you continue to go down the line and you get to a guy like Damon Claiborne, where a guy like him, Wake Forest, running back, and probably not the best college production, but has premium speed. I mean, I looked at some of the next gen stats, like miles per hour run at the combine. He was really high up there. But even with a guy like that, to Nick's question, you're talking about what about all the other stuff, the reliability, the how much conviction can you have even if he does have the speed? So kind of my feeling on the running back position with the draft to kind of round it out, Nick, is that, I mean, if somehow by the grace of whatever, Jeremiah Love got anywhere close, I mean, you'd pounce there, but that's probably not likely to happen. Jadarian Price, we'll kind of see what the range is. And then after that, if there is a spot 82, 97, somewhere in the middle there where it's like, there's a guy we really like, or maybe there's a guy we mildly like, but there are other players who we love who aren't on the board anymore. Maybe that's a spot where you start to take that shot. I mean, an interesting name, and I need to watch more of them, is Clemson's Adam Randall. This guy he's a converted receiver. He's like 220 pounds, but he was also like ran 22 point something miles per hour at the combine. I'd say like this running back class does not compare at all to last year. It was part of why, even though the need is different now, like the idea that the Vikings didn't draft a guy last year was always a little bit interesting and kind of curious, and it just seems even more so now. But that's a lot on the running back spot, Nick, but hopefully that gives you a pretty good feel. Doesn't feel like anything is guaranteed, especially at 49 or 87, 82 or 97, where the Vikings are probably going to be in the range for a center there. We'll see how it plays out, but that's kind of my feel of the running back spot. Dustin Roberts, Alec, can you name some moves that Rob Brzezinski and the Vikings can do with existing player contracts to free up more cap space? Do they even have enough space to sign a draft class? I think, like, technically they need to clear more space to sign the draft class. That's never going to be a problem because there's always more ways to maneuver the cap. I would say this. So a couple ways they could do it with the current roster, like an extension for Brian O'Neill or an extension for Blake Cashman would be a way to kind of ease up some of the money in the short term. Definitely with Brian O'Neill, but with Blake Cashman as well. Jonathan Grenard, if there was a rework deal there, that would probably open up some space. And then there are some other possibilities, like if you wanted to tweak Andrew Van Ginkel's contract or Will Fries's, there are some avenues there, but that's kind of what comes to mind. Because I was looking at this, Dustin, because it was a good question. I looked at so where are the Vikings 2027 from a cap space standpoint? They're not crazy high, but they do have 50 million in space. I think it was 33 in effective cap space, which accounts for draft spending. And then there are other levers that they can pull. But one of the, I would say, byproducts of the moves that the Vikings have or haven't made through free agency thus far, part of that is to open up possibilities in 2027 and beyond, and just to add flexibility, which, I mean, you asked about Rob Brzezinski, but it is kind of a credit to a guy like that. He could have just acted for the short term, tried to impress everybody with a bunch of signings, and obviously took a more long-term view with it. Next question comes from Mac. When you had Cody Alexander on your show for last season, he said Flores might have intentionally given up success in the run defense to prevent the secondary from being targeted. Did that strategy work? And could the same approach be taken this year? So this is a really good callback, Mac, and it obviously shows you're a loyal listener or viewer, which I really appreciate and don't take for granted. And we'll have Cody Alexander back again. I was actually texting Cody the other day about some of the safety prospects, who he thinks fits, why, etc., just to get a perspective of someone who knows defense. And Cody was a longtime coach. He runs a website, Match Quarters. He's the man. See him at the combine and always love that. But yeah, so Cody talked a lot about part of the reason you move on from a Harrison Phillips to Jonathan Bullard is to be a little lighter up front, to maybe entice offenses to want to be more efficient and less explosive. And explosives are huge in terms of scoring because it's really hard to go 12 plays in a row and score on opposing defense. So it was a sensible idea from Cody, and it tracks with just some of the conversations I've had. One of the components of it that probably made it pretty tough for that to work was because I think part of it was the Vikings thought they'd be leading in games a lot more as a byproduct of the offense being better, which we all know the offense was putrid for most of the season. And so when you're leading, the opposing team, you entice them to run a little bit more because that's where you're a little bit more susceptible. So I would say it felt like because the Vikings often were trailing, opposing offenses just felt comfortable continuing to run the football. They're not having to pass to come back from early deficits. And so I think that played a role in allowing opposing teams to want to run the ball more, which they were probably more suited to do against the structure of the Vikings defense. That was kind of a convoluted answer, but kind of a tangentially related part of that question. I mean, I would be pretty surprised if the Vikings just all of a sudden shifted fully the other way back to a bunch of nose tackle types that are just plugging gas, because I just think the way, not that they don't value stopping the run, but those guys, the nose tackle types, you can find those guys in free agency. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys just paid Jonathan Bullard $1.5 million, and Jonathan Bullard's not a player you guys or the media you're never going to ride home about, but the guy can stop the run, and so there is value in that. It's just from a spending standpoint, from a premium draft capital component, factor, or a salary cap standpoint, you're probably hard pressed to see major spending there and a drastic shift back. Next question comes from Waka's World. I believe that's Micah Waka, or Michael Waka, the pitcher for the Royals. She asks, is there a specific position or side of the ball you think the Vikings could prioritize with their pick at 18? This was a good question. I mean, I think if you look at mock drafts around the NFL right now, at all the people that we know and trust, the Daniel Jeremiahs, I could rattle them all off. The Dane Bruglers of the world, the Jordan Reeds and the, Matt Millers and the, Kuipers and the McShays. All of those guys seem to think that the Vikings are absolutely going to draft a safety in the first round. I don't think that's anywhere close to the given that just in the public sphere, it seems to be. Not to say that they won't, just don't think it's that much of a given to where 70% of mock drafts at least should have that position. But I would say I'd probably fall on defense here. I mean, the Vikings took Jordan Addison in the first round in 2023, J.J. McCarthy in the first round, obviously Dallas Turner 2 in 2024, and then Donovan Jackson, the left guard last year in the first round. And so it just feels like the defense is kind of due. I would also say, like, just from a depth perspective and age perspective, you probably want to get younger on defense. And I'd say there's more holes there, so it makes sense to try to get more to plug those holes with more premium players. So I also looked this up because I thought it was interesting. Like the Vikings are projected to spend like $160 million on 2026 on their offense in 2026, and the projection for the defense like 120 million. So just feels like defense would make a lot of sense. It's just then you go into the conversation of, what's available, who's available, is there a first rounder at 18 that's completely obvious, and if not, can you trade back? Who wants to trade up in this draft? Where I had someone in the league tell me earlier today about this draft. I'm just going to read it verbatim. A lot of players that'll play well, but maybe not a ton of difference makers. So that's kind of how this draft is viewed. All right, next question comes from M. Why would Rob Brzezinski want the GM job? This is him talking, or her. He was in the previous role for 20 years, an obvious job security, whereas the GM role can be on the hot seat that gets you fired in a handful of years. It's a good question, certainly. What I would say is like, if you were to make the case of why would Rob Brzezinski at this point want this job now, there are a couple ways you go about it. You could say, well, he's worked for the team for 20 plus years, and maybe you get to the point where it's like, why not take a crack at this thing? I've done it for this long, and now seems to be the right time. You could also say maybe this guy who wants to win a Super Bowl here as much as you guys do, understandably, like maybe it's like the best way or the best path to doing that would be with the leadership, with my leadership or my perspective. Like I think those would be two reasons, and potentially, like, you just get to a point in your career. I think like this, you guys could probably relate to this in your own jobs and livelihoods. Like at certain times in your life, you're probably willing to take more risk, or you're willing to, or you care less about certain things, or you sense different aspects or components of what might make sense. So I think again, it's a good question, but that's kind of how I would answer it. Purple Context asks, of the potential international games, which one would you hope that the Vikings play? A, the Saints in Paris. B, the Lions in Munich. C, the 49ers in Mexico City. This is a good one. And this is just purely my opinion. I've been to Paris. I really liked it. That's controversial. Are the people nice there? Is it the cleanness? What about the food? I love my experience there. The food was phenomenal. I thought, the Eiffel Tower was cool. I just like Paris. So that would I'd say probably be my first pick. Then I would probably go Mexico City. And the reasons would be, you don't have to take the entire flight to Munich. And then Mexico City is one of the best food cities in America. Mexico City is one of the best food cities in the world. Hopefully we can edit that one out. Yeah, I'm a big foodie, so it would be awesome to get to experience that. And then I don't have to do that 10-hour flight, which is just not for me. I get a little too restless, I'd probably say. Lions in Munich would be interesting, but like, I don't know. I don't really need to go to Munich to see the Detroit Lions, but I'd be curious what you guys think about that. Purple Nurple, why do you think the national media is so set on us taking a safety in the first? It is a need and definitely an option. But everything Rob has said is that we're looking at this year and next year's needs, best player available, which puts most positions on the table. I think that's exactly right. And that was kind of the point I was trying to make earlier, where like I understand why safety is an easy mock selection. Because the Vikings' current safety room is Theo Jackson, Josh Metellus, and Jay Ward, and Jay Ward and Josh Metellus probably play best closer to the line of scrimmage, and Theo Jackson, obviously, I would say had a pretty up and down year in 2025. So I definitely get it. And if the Vikings were to just forge ahead without any safety addition in the 2026 draft, I think I'd be like, huh. I mean, they really have a lot of reliability and reliance that they can cover for the secondary. But I just I think part of the reason it's so common with the national media, specifically with Dylan Thieneman, the Oregon safety, is because it's an easy spot for him. A lot of people are trying to find a spot for him, and it's, potentially we'll see with Harrison Smith. If he were to not come back, then you replace him with a white safety. And I will say this with Dylan Thieneman, like the character stuff is really good. Know some people at Oregon, have talked to some people at Oregon, like they rave about him. So that part of it makes sense. And then Emmanuel McNeil Warren, the Toledo safety, who's I think 6'3", 200 plus probably. I mean, he definitely has the athleticism and the explosiveness to like that you would think Brian Flores would be able to weaponize a little bit. So that's probably part of it. But it's convenient for a lot of these mock drafts, and some of the experts doing the mock drafts, I think, to just put the safety there. And I to your point, Purple Nurple, the way I expect the Vikings to go about this draft, specifically at the top, is, how do we just find the best player? And that is with an understanding of what the needs are this year and what the needs are next year. Next question, Ronnie Patetti. If the board doesn't fall the way the Vikings way, okay, and get an interior defensive line early, any sense you could see them going after Christian Wilkins since he's played for Flores before? Do you feel like the alleged locker room distractions could be too much risk? I haven't heard anything on Christian Wilkins. I haven't asked on Christian Wilkins, so yeah. I mean, he obviously is not on the team currently. Brian Flores did draft him in the first round in Miami, so I get the link there. But yeah, I mean, I think I could just use that question to say that any holes that the Vikings don't fill in the draft, like the best way I describe what I feel like their process is right now is we don't have to just fill the hole at the first opportunity to fill it. Like, let's try to fill the holes in the best possible way. If that means leaving a hole open to fill it later, we're going to have the patience to do that. We're not just going to rush to fill holes. Like, that feels like, if it seems to me like one of Rob Brzezinski, and I can just deduce this from the conversations I've had with him and with people internally, it's like, one way that you can mess up as an organization is to want every hole filled in the short term as opposed to wanting to fill holes the right way. And I sound like I'm at the beach, which I'm going to be soon, like doing, digging holes out there. So maybe that's why I keep saying that, but that's kind of how I view it. Boogeyman, who are the best defensive linemen in the draft who are scheme fits for Flores? This is a great question. Great question. Because when you think of where the Vikings have taken their interior defensive line group, you think like not 330 pounds, probably more like the 305 range. You think can get vertical, can play the run, but also have some pass rush juice. I mean, I'll never forget, like, Flores always used this line of big guys who move like little guys. This draft in particular, especially at the top, a lot of the premium interior defensive linemen are nose tackle types. So less big men who move like big men, I guess is the best way to say it. And so, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I've watched a lot of these guys because I'm fascinated by it. You look at a guy like Caden McDonald of Ohio State, and he is more of the big guy who moves like a big guy. Now, could you squint and try to say that maybe there's more pass rush upside there? Like, it's possible. I think I am of the belief after watching the tape that Kristen Miller, the defensive lineman from Georgia, like, has more pass rush upside there than potentially a Caden McDonald. And I've talked to some scouts in the league. They like both players. I think a question would be, consensus big board, you've got Kristen Miller at like 30 plus. So are you going to draft him at 18 if you're interested in drafting interior defensive lineman? Would you try to trade back? Again, given this draft and how it is, how many teams are going to be trying to trade up? Does it depend who falls? That's why the mock exercise is both valuable and also like filling out a bracket, because you just don't know who's going to be available, what the ramifications of that might be for a team wanting to move up. And so it's not like we won't do mock drafts, but I'd say Kristen Miller is a guy. I mean, later on in the draft, like if the Vikings stay away from interior defensive linemen up top, couple guys who are interesting to me. Rayshon Benny from Michigan's pretty interesting to me. Caleb Proctor from southeastern Louisiana is like a small school guy who's had some helium in this draft cycle. So hopefully that gives you a few to think about. Boogeyman, Viking Tough 74. Update on JJ progress since he's back in the building. Again, everything I've heard probably in the last month or so about JJ McCarthy has been positive and optimistic. But again, just like last year, like routes on air and which I know he's not even doing yet, but like, strength and conditioning is one thing, routes on air is another thing, and then performing when the lights are on in training camp is an entirely different thing. So the evaluation is just going to be about when it gets really competitive, what does it look like? And then from just a day-to-day standpoint, you're back in the building for a month. How is it? 2 months from now, how does it go? 5 months from now, how does it go? Like, I think all that is part of it. If you're the GM of the Vikings, map out your round 1 and round 2 picks. Where would you go? Cornerback, safety. If I was the GM, which they would never and should never hire me because I don't have the patience, would be I would try to trade back, not too far and not within the division. But let's say if I could get back to 26, and then there are a bunch of guys there who I would be okay with and comfortable with, and then pick up a day 2 pick, maybe in the 80s, and then try to be after best available. So if there's a interior defensive lineman I like, if there's a tackle I would even be thinking about, safety would be fine. Yeah, that's probably, and then day 3 I'm rattling off center, receiver, potentially tight end, probably a DB at some point there, and an IDL if I didn't get one early. But that's where I'd go. Let's see. Similar question. Thumbs loves Dusty. That's a interesting username. If you were the Vikings GM, what would be the order of top 5 positions that you think need to be addressed in the draft, not just this year, but for the overall health of the franchise? So I'm always going to include linemen on this. So center for sure, because I just think that's a major need. I would say tackle because I just feel like depth is important. Even if Brian O'Neill receives an extension, depth there is critical, and you can never have enough of those guys. Interior defensive line, edge rusher, and then I'd probably say safety, just because of the importance of the need. So yeah, that's where I'd go. Loves Dusty. Next question, Seth Mitzel. I hope I get that right. I gave it 2 shots, so I guarantee I did. Hopefully. What are the odds the Vikings actually take Thieneman at 18? Everyone in the national media has him going 18, but the local talk on him seems to be quiet. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not going to rule out anything with the draft because of the machinations of how it'll go. But I also, you guys hopefully have seen my 2 mock drafts at The Athletic. I haven't had Dylan Thieneman. Again, not because I don't think he's of interest at all. I just am not sure if at 18 that totally makes sense. And I'd also say this. I mean, safety is a really interesting position. It's tough to evaluate because it's such an instinctive smarts position. And it's often also not the most athleticism, laden position. Like you can find guys with ball skills, i.e. Cam Bynum, who sometimes are just as valuable. You can find those guys later on. So for me, I'm not sure if that's the spot where I want to take a safety, and maybe it's the having covered Lewis seen in that situation kind of in the back of my mind. Skoldock, is Dexter Lawrence a realistic option for the Vikings? What would the trade compensation look like? I mean, I imagine, given what the Jets got for Quinnen Williams, like a first round pick is going to be coveted. I don't know how many teams will go there, especially if he's seeking a new deal. And then, I mean, I like if you were to ask me, would the Vikings love a player like Dexter Lawrence? Yes. Do I think they, with the compensation from a draft capital and money standpoint, are in position to do that? I think it would be much harder to make that work. Again, a really talented player, one of the most exceptional interior defenders. And if you could acquire him for, I mean, a second round pick, it would be really hard not to think about doing that. So yeah, I hopefully that answers it. I mean, again, I mentioned the Vikings cap situation. So if 2027 they've got 50 million in space. Let's say you're taking on 20 million for Dexter Lawrence, then you got 30 million. You're at 30 million, and then you're talking about what else are you going to need? You're going to need a new tight end. Are you going to need, are you extending? I mean, we're thinking long down the road, but what if you got to extend Kyler, and that makes sense to do? I mean, it's just I'm not sure how much flexibility that would give, even though I know a talented player like Dexter Lawrence, you're not just going to dismiss that entirely. Javon Stewart, what's one move or type of move you believe the Vikings are more likely to make than fans currently realize? I would say, do I think the Vikings would draft a receiver in the first round this year? Probably not. But do I think they could take a receiver at 49? Yes. Like I definitely think that's possible. So I'm not sure if that would shock people. I'm not sure what people, what the reaction would be. But when you think about losing Jalen Naylor, the development of Ty Felton, Jordan Addison, and just the lack of consistency off the field over the last few years, finding another guy that you'd have a lot of conviction in, would be important probably for this team and for this offense from a depth perspective. So if that were to be a coveted spot at 49, not going to be surprised by that. Skoldock, will there be an emphasis on changing offensive line blocking and footwork technique now that Frank Smith has a larger say in the run game? As far as the specifics of changing technique, I think that's a great question, and that's something that I look forward to diving into the nitty gritty come OTAs and minicamp. But the point you make is the world you're going down or the road you're going down with Frank Smith is an astute one. I mean, I do think he was the OC in Miami with Mike McDaniel, had played a big role in that run game. Going back years, he's worked with the offensive lines, guy like Aaron Cromer, who was the Bills O-line coach he's worked with. So just the idea he's going to have a massive role in this run game is something that probably will be talked about, should be talked about, and how that impacts the day-to-day practice habits and schedule at TCO Performance Center, how that affects the runs that are called, how that affects marrying the run game with the pass like all of that stuff. The scheme nerd in me can't wait to kind of dive into that more, but it's worth talking about. Someone whose Twitter username is Young Alec at Alec Lewis Burner, which makes me quite worried probably. In your eyes, what is their plan of action for center draft Brandell? So I expect Blake Brandell to be working at center throughout this offseason. And I also would be very surprised at this point if the Vikings don't emerge from the 2026 draft without a center prospect who could potentially, who's a development guy. We'll see how does Blake Brandell perform. We'll see the progress that potential draftee makes. But there is a clump of guys. I said this to somebody the other day, whether it's Logan Jones from Iowa, Jake Slaughter from Florida, Sam Heck from Kansas State, Connor Liu from Auburn, Jaeger Burton from Kentucky. I mean, it's like walking into the grocery store and you're selecting which frozen pizza you're going to buy. They're all kind of different. They're all kind of similar. You probably have a favorite depending on who you are and your lens. But it's frozen pizza is a frozen pizza, and you know what you're kind of going to get. You know how you're going to feel the day after. And I'm not just saying that to get a frozen pizza sponsor, but if there is one, I'm all ears. So yeah. Let's see. John, do you see the Vikings addressing the WR3 position in the draft? Just kind of talked about that. So hopefully that gave you some perspective. Ryan Erickson, if they packaged Grenard with 18, how much higher do you think they could climb in the first round? Great question, Ryan. Something I've thought a lot about. Um, I think part of how I would start with answering that question is which teams have the need for an edge rusher and the cap space to make that happen. So, like, I'm just going to go down the list because it's interesting. Like, let's see here. Like the Dallas Cowboys probably don't have the cap space to do it. They only have 14 million for 2026, and I'm not sure what their edge rusher room looks like. Like, are the Titans in position to do something like that? Um, the Titans are. Let's see here. Their edge rusher room. I mean, they added John Franklin Myers. They've got Jermaine Johnson. I don't know if they would want to do that. And then you're probably not going to be able to get up that high. Um, I mean, like, I guess you could even talk about, like, could you part with 49 and Grenard and move up to like the late 20s and have two guys? Like, I mean, there's a lot. It's an interesting thought experiment to potentially package him with the pick. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate everything I've said for weeks and months now. Like, the Vikings don't want to trade Jonathan Grenard. It's obviously been a money conversation. How many teams will call in the draft and what does that look like? Like, I think that's an interesting conversation topic to consider. I mean, the Colts might have the money to do it, but where are the Colts picking? I mean, you start to look at that and it's like, the Colts are I mean, it's two spots ahead. So you need a lot in return as well. A lot of ways to go about that, but I do think it's a fun little thought experiment to have, of like where you would want to go and what might be possible there. All right, let's rattle off a few more of these. JJ, who are some potential day 2, day 3 prospects that you believe the Vikings could target? Well, I mean, again, if we're talking receiver being a possibility at 49, there's guys in that realm of Jeremy Bernard, Antonio Williams from Clemson, Ted Hurst from Georgia State, Dejon Stribling from Ole Miss. Like, those are some guys in that range. I mentioned the centers, whether that's at 82 or 97. And then I like, if there's a DB in that range. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the one dude I love for Brian Flores' system, but again, where's he going to go? It's a valid question. Jayshawn Barham, the edge rusher from Michigan. I mean, that guy is versatile, plays violently, has some pass rush juice, has instincts. Don't think the Vikings had their edge rushers coach or Brian Flores in Michigan, but that's not necessarily a cross off for interest in him. Justin Robert, why are there so many food options at US Bank Stadium? Dan Barrero wants to know. I don't know if there are. I've never really gone as a fan, but hopefully there are. We'll get to a few more. Free9 is the person's username. What does it look like if Kyler loses the QB battle? Do we trade him? Hard to picture him sitting on the bench. Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking. I mean, that's like, it's a little bit of a fantasy world that is. I mean, I guess in that vein, maybe you could trade him in that world. That's just not my expectation at this point. Lizard to Kaprizov to Lizard to Kaprizov is the person's username. What is your scouting report on Viking Gustafsson Nyberg? Can he play with his back to the basket? What is his vertical at Russo Hockey? I did see that, like, they added a guy named Viking to the Minnesota Wild. Look, all I know is I'm ready for that Star series if it happens to begin. I mean, I mean, this town is going to be buzzing over it. The energy in that series should be great. So looking forward to that. And then last one, Skoldoc. How will you be celebrating Masters Week and describe your golf game? I'll be celebrating by watching a lot from Thursday to Sunday. I absolutely love it. I've been to a practice round and I was really grateful to get to do it. But Yeah, I think I'm in the Masters bet on KFAN, so I'm trying to figure that out. And then, I love it. I love the Masters, love everything about it. So can't wait. Describe my golf game: inconsistent, not embarrassing, can hold my own a little bit, but the driver is shaky, the irons are solid, in the short game, once I play a little bit, can be pretty good. But I love playing golf and would be curious. You guys' favorite courses in the area, so I can get ready this summer if it gets warm. That'll do it for episode 155 of the Alec Lewis Show. It was really fun, as it always is, answering you guys' questions. We're going to be back later this week with another draft analyst who I have enjoyed getting to know since doing this, and he pays attention to the Vikings, so it should be pretty fun. That'll be later this week on YouTube, where you can subscribe, and audio, where you can follow, rate, and review. The show is presented by First Resource Bank. Their information is in the description below. It's sponsored by Unreal, the clothing brand that is based here in the Twin Cities that puts together some awesome athleisure. And then Pro MN, which we introduced during this episode. But again, if you guys have kids or know of friends with kids who love football, who want training from guys who have played college and who know how to put together kind of a structure of training, on field, training, conversations with, older guys, mentorship in many ways. They're educational with parents on some of the college recruiting process. But Pro MN, they have a spring academy. They also have a 7-on-7 league that sounded pretty awesome, where they run it in a way that's like, they're not trying to just win games. They're trying to educate and give guys reps out there to improve. But their information is in the description. Pro MN. Please go check out Kurt, Graham, and Tanner Morgan, the great Tanner Morgan. But yeah, that'll do it. We will talk to you guys very, very soon.